In our next segment of the Mayor's Magazine, we're going to meet Lou Berney. Lou is an author, lives right here in Oklahoma City. Lou, welcome to the Mayor's Magazine.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, your first novel is getting, well, lots of acclaim. Boston Globe calling it a highly entertaining caper novel, and you brought a copy with us here. Tell us about Gutshot Straight.
Well, what I did with that was I basically started with the fairy tale Snow White, and I decided to tell it in the modern day. So Snow White in this version is a stripper con woman. The evil queen is the head of the Armenian mob in LA, and the huntsman who is sent to kill Snow White but lets her go is an ex-con getaway driver who then gets in a lot of trouble for letting her go. And so that's sort of where the story starts and where it goes.
What time period does this take place?
Right now.
And what was I guess the impetus for the inspiration for this movie, for this book?
I guess I was always a big fan of Walt Disney's version of Snow White, and I always most identified with the huntsman, who was the guy who was supposed to kill this girl and let her go. And I kept wanting to know through the rest of that movie what happened to him. He's not in the rest of the movie, and I figured he was going to be in big trouble whenever he got back and told the evil queen that she was gone. And so I decided to make him the central character of the novel.
Interesting. What did you learn when you were writing the book? Did you learn anything about you or yourself or the writing craft, or what took you?
Well, I did a lot of research on it. I went to Panama to do some research because that's where the book goes, the Panama Canal in Panama. And I did some research in a couple strip clubs, which I wasn't happy about. But there's things you have to do as a writer that it's just part of the job. So I think I learned a lot of things just about the world in general, which is what makes writing fun for me.
And you're also a teacher.
I do. I teach at OU. I teach a class at OU, and I teach also in the graduate writing program at OCU. So I love to teach as well, and I get a lot of my writing ideas through my students. Not from my students, I should make clear.
Yeah.
That would be stealing.
What advice could you offer to people who maybe they've always thought they might want to write, but have just never taken the time to sit down and start putting that first chapter together?
I'd say don't do it. Don't do it. It's a very difficult way to make a living. It's very hard. But then if you have to do it, then I think, read a lot and read a lot of good authors, read a lot of bad authors, just read constantly. And that's the best way, I think, to learn as a writer.
Do you, as you write, are you constantly fixing it paragraph by paragraph, or do you write it through and then go back and review it? What's your technique?
That's a great question. I think my technique is more, I like to try to get all the way through if possible and then go back and do drafts, revisions. But a lot of times if you hit a wall, you really have to figure it out before you go forward. So I go back and forth between those two things.
How much of the story is in your mind before you start writing it, or are you actually composing the story as you're writing?
72%. Give or take. No, I think it's a good question. I think a lot of it is in my mind, but I'm always open to it changing and adapting. And because what will happen is if you're writing a good character, the character will start doing things that surprise you. And those are usually the best parts of the book.
Since it's a mystery, did you write the last chapter first or before you wrote to the end?
No, I didn't. I thought it was going to end in a completely different way than it did. I really did. And there's a character at the end that I didn't even know was going to be in the book. So it's one of those kind of things you just have to adapt as you go.
Yeah. Is it a common practice to write a mystery as you go, or is it written sort of from the back forward? How would you go?
I think every writer does it differently, and I think mystery writers tend to probably start with some idea of how the puzzle is solved. And mine is less a mystery than sort of an action thriller with comedy, so I didn't have to worry too much about that. But I think a lot of them start from the end and go back.
Do you consider yourself professionally trained, or did you have an instinct early on that you just naturally were an excellent writer?
Yeah, I always wanted to be a writer. As early as I can remember. My sisters are older than I am, taught me to read when I was 2 or 3 years old and forced me to play school, every summer. So I was definitely interested in being a writer, but I also went to graduate school and I got my MFA in creative writing. So I think the combination of sort of natural instincts coupled with training, was the way for me to go.
Mm-hmm. Do you correspond, or do you have a lot of contact with other Oklahoma writers? Because I know there's a growing universe of writers here in the city. There's
a really thriving literary community here, and there's good bookstores here, and there's a lot of readers here, and a lot of people who read a lot. And so one of the reasons I'm from Oklahoma City, lived for many years away from Oklahoma, and then moved back.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those reasons that my wife and I moved back was because it's become a much more thriving cultural, literary place to be. In the last 10 years, it's been amazing.
And where'd you grow up? What neighborhood?
I'd rather not say. The Village.
The Village.
So I can't vote for you.
And high school?
I went to McGinnis, Bishop McGinnis.
Terrific. And where can we get your book?
It's available everywhere. It's bookstores have it. It's in paperback now. You can go on Amazon. You can download it. You can send me an email and I'll come by and read it to you at bedtime if you want. Whatever you want.
It is Gutshot Straight by Lou Berney. Lou, thanks so much for being a part of our literary scene and for coming on the Mayor's Magazine and telling us about it.
Thanks so much.
All right. We'll be back with more after this.